The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. C.G. Jung. You say you know yourself, but do you? When you introduce yourself, are you naming the essence of your being, or are you reciting a mask polished for approval? When you agree out of fear, is that your true will, or the persona you've been trained to wear? And when anger, desire, or ambition stirs in you, do you call it sin, shame, weakness, or do you dare to recognize it as part of your own self, waiting to be carried with proportion? Look at your life. How much of it is chosen? And how much is inherited script? Do you hear your own voice when you speak, or the voices of parents, teachers, lovers long past? How many of your decisions are authentic, and how many are echoes of wounds you never faced? And when you feel restless in success, empty in pleasure, or guilty in silence, do you not sense that something essential remains undiscovered? Jung warns you, the greatest danger is not failure, but falsehood, the life lived as fragment, mistaking the mask for the self. You chase applause, yet feel hollow. You chase comfort, yet remain restless. Why? Because until you confront your shadow, untangle your complexes, and withdraw your projections, you remain captive to ghosts inside you. So the question is not whether you have a self. You do. The question is whether you will ever meet it. Will you keep living as a mask for others, or will you begin the merciless, necessary task of becoming whole? You live in an age that tells you to be yourself, but almost no one explains what that means. Is your self the curated image you polish for approval? Is it the voice of your parents still echoing in your choices? Is it the role you play to keep peace in your family, your workplace, your community? How much of your life is authentic and how much is performance you've rehearsed so long you can't tell the difference? Jung cuts deeper than slogans. He warns you that without integration, you do not live as a whole being, but as a fragment. Your persona, the mask you wear to be liked, can protect you, but if you mistake it for your essence, you are already lost. Your shadow, the traits you exile because they feel dangerous, does not disappear, it rules you from the dark. Complexes, those old emotional knots tied in childhood, hijack you, making you speak, act, and choose as though you were still a frightened child. And projection blinds you, forcing you to meet not real people, but reflections of what you refuse to face in yourself. Ask yourself plainly, when was the last time you acted from your center rather than from fear of disapproval or hunger for applause? When you feel restlessness, even in success, emptiness, even in pleasure, guilt, even in silence, do you not sense that the self is calling, waiting to be known? The context is merciless until you face the truth of what governs you. Inside your so-called freedom is theater. You will keep mistaking applause for identity, avoidance for virtue, and habit for destiny. The question is not whether you have a self, you do. The question is whether you will ever find it, or keep living as the mask you've been trained to wear. To find your true self, you must first understand the forces within you that prevent you from living as a whole. Jung did not flatter you, he warned you. You cannot become yourself until you know the masks, the shadows, the knots, and the illusions that govern your choices. Ask yourself, what part of you do you show, what part do you hide, and what part do you not even know exists? First, the persona. This is the mask you wear in society, the face you polish so you will be liked, accepted, rewarded. Persona is not evil, it allows you to function. But when you mistake the mask for your essence, you fracture yourself. How often have you said yes when every fiber in you wanted to say no? How often do you introduce yourself with titles, roles, or reputations that leave your soul untouched? You think you are protecting yourself, but really you are burying yourself alive beneath performance. Second, the shadow. These are the traits you exile: anger, ambition, desire, even joy. You deny them because you fear rejection, but they do not disappear. They sabotage you from within or return through others who embody them in your life. How often do you meet people you envy, despise, or cannot resist and fail to realize they are carrying your shadow for you? Until you reclaim these disowned parts, you will always be incomplete. Third, complexes. These are emotional knots tied in childhood, still alive in you today. A harsh parent, a shaming teacher, a betrayal that cut too deep, these moments fragment you. When triggered, you no longer act as an adult. You collapse into the wounded child, the guilty believer, the terrified lover. How many of your arguments, breakdowns, or rash choices are really the echoes of these complexes, repeating old scripts with new actors? Until you untangle them, you remain captive to memory disguised as fate. Fourth projection. When you refuse to own a part of yourself, you cast it outward. The strength you deny, you worship in others. The flaws you repress, you condemn in others. You think you see people clearly, but you are often staring at fragments of yourself. How many lovers have you mistaken for destiny, when really they were screens for your disowned traits? How many enemies have you invented, when they were only mirrors of what you could not accept? Projection blinds you, chaining you to illusions instead of reality. Finally, the self. The self is not another mask or role. It is the governing center of your psyche, the totality that can hold opposites without collapse. Ego wants control. Persona seeks approval. Shadow hides complexes. Hijack projections, deceive. But the self integrates. It demands proportion, light and dark, strength and tenderness, freedom and responsibility. This is what Jung called individuation, the lifelong task of becoming whole. So the theoretical ground is merciless but liberating. You are not free while you live only as persona. You are not free while your shadow sabotages you. You are not free while complexes hijack you or projections blind you. You are free only when you integrate, when you face what governs you and allow the self to hold it in proportion. Now the question turns back to you. Which force rules you most right now? The mask, the shadow, the knot, or the illusion? And will you keep calling that who you are? Or will you begin the harder work of meeting the self that has been waiting for you all along? To see how this unfolds, you do not need to look at rare or extraordinary lives. You need only examine the ordinary patterns you repeat every day. The struggle to find your true self does not announce itself in grand dramas, but in the subtle habits, the repeated conflicts, the restlessness you cannot shake. Ask yourself, where in your daily life do you feel hollow after performing, guilty after appeasing, or restless after indulging? These are the signals of the false self at work. Consider the workplace. You show up eager, mask polished, ready to prove your worth. You say yes to tasks you cannot carry. You silence your objections to keep peace. You laugh at jokes that degrade you. Outwardly, you are praised, the diligent colleague, the reliable worker. Inwardly, resentment grows. You collapse at night, drained not by labor itself, but by the endless effort of maintaining a mask. How much of your exhaustion is physical, and how much is the cost of living as a persona instead of yourself? Now think of relationships. You fall in love, but notice how quickly you repeat old dynamics. You find yourself playing the caretaker, always rescuing, or the victim, always needing rescue, or the controller, always managing. These roles feel inevitable, but are they love? Or are they complexes replaying themselves through new faces? How often do you call it destiny, when really it is repetition of a wound you never integrated? And when your partner frustrates you, are you seeing them clearly, or only the projection of your own disowned shadow? Family life exposes the same pattern. You gather with relatives, and suddenly you are not the adult you thought you had become. A parent criticizes you and your body reacts as though you are still a child, defensive, small, ashamed. A sibling provokes you and rage erupts out of proportion. In that moment, who is speaking? The adult you are, or the old complex hijacking your voice? How free are you when one sentence from a family member can undo years of growth? Social life offers its own mask. You attend gatherings, smile through discomfort, tell stories that make you sound successful, charming, accomplished. People admire you. Yet later in solitude, you feel hollow, unseen, almost fraudulent. Why? Because the persona was applauded, not the self. How many times have you walked away from a room full of people and felt more invisible than before? Even solitude itself can betray you. You tell yourself you are resting, but instead you numb with screens, distractions, or compulsions. You avoid silence because in silence the shadow rises. You avoid stillness because in stillness the complexes stir. But avoiding them does not free you, it enslaves you further. Do you see how quickly relaxation becomes sedation? How quickly pleasure becomes escape? How quickly freedom becomes bondage? These are not exotic cases, they are your life. At work, you wear the mask. In love, you replay the wound. In family, you collapse into the child. In social spaces, you perform the role. In solitude, you sedate yourself. And through it all, you wonder why you feel restless, empty, unseen. The answer is merciless. You have not met yourself. The typical examples expose the same law. Until you withdraw projection, untangle complexes, reclaim shadow, and loosen persona, you will not find your true self. You will keep repeating, performing, escaping. The life you call yours will remain a stage managed by unconscious forces. So the question confronts you now: which of these examples is yours? Which room, which relationship, which ritual reveals the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be? Will you keep excusing the mask as necessary, the repetition as fate, the sedation as rest? Or will you finally admit that the self is still waiting beyond persona, beyond wound? Beyond illusion to be found. Finding your true self is not blocked by mystery. It is blocked by mechanisms that operate with ruthless precision. Until you see how they work, you will keep mistaking captivity for character. Ask yourself what forces hijacked your body, your thoughts, your energy, your choices, before you even notice what has happened. First, the physiological mechanism. Complexes live in the body as much as the mind. A parent's criticism decades ago still tightens your chest today. A harsh tone from a boss makes your stomach clench as though survival itself were threatened. You call this stress, but it is memory disguised as present reality. How free are you if one voice, one gesture, one look can still command your nervous system? Until you name the trigger, your body will keep obeying ghosts. Second, the cognitive mechanism. The mind defends your captivity with stories. You rationalize the persona as professionalism, though it robs you of honesty. You excuse avoidance as being easygoing, though it erodes your dignity. You glorify exhaustion as dedication, though it is only compliance. How many of your explanations are not truth, but camouflage for fear? And when you hear yourself say, "This is just who I am," are you describing your essence or defending your mask? Third, the energetic mechanism. Psychic energy is finite. When you spend it repressing shadow, replaying complexes, and sustaining persona, almost none remains for creativity, intimacy, or depth. This is why you feel hollow even after rest, because your energy was drained into performance, not replenishment. Do you notice how fatigue often comes not from the work itself, but from the role you must play to survive it? Fourth, the reinforcement mechanism. Each time you comply with the persona, each time you obey the complex, each time you project shadow onto others, you reinforce the pattern. The relief is temporary. You escape shame or conflict, but the cost is long-term bondage. The more you repeat it, the deeper the groove. How many of your habits are not choices, but reflexes, carved by decades of reinforcement? And will you keep mistaking these grooves for destiny? Fifth, the projection mechanism. What you deny in yourself does not vanish, it appears outside you. You admire discipline in others while refusing to cultivate it within. You despise arrogance in others while denying your own need for power. You fall in love with vitality in others while suppressing your own desires. Each projection binds you to illusion, ensuring you never see people or yourself clearly. How many of your relationships are not encounters with reality, but negotiations with disowned parts of you? Sixth, the ethical mechanism. To refuse yourself is not only to betray yourself, but to burden others. When you hide behind persona, others are forced to relate to your mask. When you avoid your shadow, others are forced to embody it for you. When you obey your complexes, others are forced to endure your regressions. How many people in your life have been made to carry what you refuse to face? Do you see how denying yourself is not private? It distorts every bond you touch. These mechanisms, body, mind, energy, repetition, projection, ethics, form the gears of captivity. They do not need force to keep you enslaved. They need only habit and avoidance. You feel free because no one is visibly controlling you. But in truth, you are ruled by the unconscious forces you refuse to confront. So the question is merciless. When your body tenses, when your mind invents excuses, when your energy leaks into repression, when you repeat old grooves, when you idolize or despise others, when your denial burdens those you love, whose life are you really living? Yours or the script of mechanisms that run you like a machine? Until you face this, you will not meet yourself. The chains are not outside you, they are within, disguised as comfort, as habit, as just who I am. Will you keep excusing them as fate, or will you begin dismantling them before they consume the only life you have? If the self is not found in slogans but in integration, then the way forward is not mystical, it is practical. You cannot think your way into wholeness. You must act into it day by day, choice by choice, until discipline reshapes instinct. The work is merciless, but it is clear. First, begin with ruthless observation. Carry a daily audit of your actions, words, and silences. Where today did you wear the persona instead of speaking truth? Where did your shadow erupt in sabotage because you refused to own it directly? Where did an old complex hijack you, leaving you a child in an adult's body? And where did projection blind you so you judged or idolized others without recognizing yourself in them? This is not theory. It is a mirror. Will you keep looking away, or will you name the places where you betrayed yourself today? Second, install the pause. Every reflex begins in the body. Tightened chest, clenched jaw, shallow breath. Learn to halt there. Before replying, before yielding, before exploding, pause. One breath can interrupt years of unconscious obedience. Do you realize how much of your life could be transformed by a single moment of awareness inserted before the reflex? Third, reclaim your shadow deliberately. If you fear anger, practice saying no. If you fear desire, let yourself admit what you want. If you despise ambition, channel it into building rather than sabotaging. The shadow carried with proportion becomes strength. Ask yourself which quality you most resist might actually be the one you most need to integrate. Fourth, withdraw your projections. Each time you find yourself fixated, idolizing someone as savior, despising someone as villain, pause and ask, what part of myself am I staring at through them? The discipline is not to collapse into cynicism, but to reclaim ownership. Who have you been using as a mirror because you refuse to face your own reflection? Fifth, confront your complexes with maturity. When old wounds flare, do not justify the reaction. Name it. This is not my present self. This is the frightened child. Then act as the adult anyway. You cannot erase the knot, but you can refuse to let it steer. Which situations still reduce you to your younger self? And how long will you let that child keep driving your life? Sixth, conserve your energy. Stop bleeding psychic vitality into performance repression and endless distraction. Set boundaries around screens, small talk, and obligations that drain you. Energy saved can be invested in creation, love, and reflection. How much of your fatigue is not life itself, but the cost of maintaining masks you no longer need? Seventh, establish repair. You will fail, you will fall back into persona, projection, or sedation. Do not dramatize it, correct it. Acknowledge the mask, the slip, the escape. Return quickly to center. The discipline is not in never falling, but in always coming back. Will you keep treating failure as collapse or as training? Eighth, publish your law. Hidden freedom is fragile. Spoken freedom becomes covenant. Tell those close to you, I am practicing silence before I speak. I am refusing to play rescuer or victim. I am owning my shadow instead of casting it on you. When you name your practice, others stop mistaking your boundaries for rejection. Do you want to keep negotiating your growth in secret, or will you create a circle where sovereignty is understood? Finally, rehearse sovereignty daily. Each morning, imagine the moment that usually undoes you, the criticism, the temptation, the guilt trip, the craving. Rehearse the pause, the breath, the adult response. By the time reality arrives, your nervous system already knows the choreography. Why keep leaving your freedom to chance when you can train it into habit? The practice is severe but liberating. Observe honestly. Pause before reflex. Reclaim. Shadow. Withdraw projections. Face complexes. Conserve energy. Repair slips. Publish your law. Rehearse sovereignty. Repeat until your no has weight and your yes has dignity. So the question comes back to you. Will you keep living as a mask, repeating old grooves, excusing fatigue as fate? Or will you begin this merciless practice today? Your true self is not hidden in theory. It waits in the next pause, the next truth, the next refusal to obey ghosts. Will you keep postponing that life, or will you finally begin to live it? The journey to yourself is not romantic, it is severe. Jung warned that the greatest danger is not failure, but falseness, living as a fragment while imagining yourself whole. The persona flatters, the shadow sabotages, the complexes hijack, the projections blind. But beneath all this waits the self, quiet, demanding, sovereign. The question is not whether it exists. The question is whether you will ever meet it. Ask yourself, how long will you keep applauding masks that leave you empty? How long will you keep repeating childhood wounds as if they were fate? How long will you keep condemning others for carrying your denied traits? And how long will you keep mistaking sedation for rest, avoidance for peace, performance for life? The truth is merciless. No one can give you yourself. Not a partner, not a teacher, not applause, not success. You must claim it by integration, by holding your shadow, by untying your complexes, by withdrawing your projections, by refusing to obey the grooves of habit. To avoid this work is to remain a slave. To embrace it is to become sovereign. So the final call is clear. Name one mask you will remove today and one shadow trait you will reclaim. Name one place where you will stop collapsing into the child and stand as the adult. Name one projection you will pull back, one fragment you will reintegrate. Anchor this truth in your marrow. You will never find yourself by avoiding your darkness, but by carrying it with proportion. Now the question stands before you. Will you keep living as a mask applauded by others, or will you begin the harder, lonelier, but nobler work of becoming whole? The choice is not distant. It is in your next word, your next refusal, your next pause. Which will you choose?